Hey everyone, your friendly tutor from Duo Blocks Edx here. Have you ever been working on a project and just wished you had a time machine? Like a way to jump back to yesterday before you made that one tiny change that broke, well, everything? Or maybe you want to try out a crazy new feature without messing up what already works. Well, for us developers, that time machine is real, and it's called Git. Today, we're going to dive into what Git is, why it's so essential, and how it completely changed the game for building software. So to really get why Git is such a big deal, let's take a little trip back in time. Before we had these amazing tools, how did we share code? Well, we had to use things like disks, flash drives, or even just zipping up folders and emailing them back and forth. I'm sure you've seen it, a folder just littered with files named project_final.js, then project_final_v2.js, and my personal favorite, project_final really done I swear.js. It was just total chaos. And honestly, it wasn't just messy, it was downright risky. Imagine trying to combine your changes with a teammate's changes, by hand. You're just copying and pasting code, hoping you don't overwrite their hard work or yours. It was this constant battle against conflicting versions. And the absolute worst part, accidentally deleting or losing important code. It was pretty clear that to build anything serious together, we needed a smarter way. And that's where Git comes in. It didn't just offer a slightly better way to do the same old thing. Nope. It brought a whole new way of thinking to the table, what we call the snapshot philosophy. This completely different approach to tracking a project's history is really the secret sauce that makes Git so unbelievably powerful. All right, so what is Git, really? The official term is a Distributed Version Control System, or DVCS for short. Now that sounds like a mouthful, I know, but let's break it down. It's a system for controlling or tracking different versions of your files. And the distributed part is super important. It was actually created way back in 2005 by the legendary Linus Torvalds, the guy who made the Linux kernel. He needed a tool that was blazing fast and could handle thousands of people all working on the same massive project from all corners of the globe. And here's the absolute game changer. See, the old way of doing things was to just keep a list of the changes you made to each file. Line 5 was deleted, line 10 was added. These are called deltas. But Git doesn't care about that. Git thinks in snapshots. The best way to picture it is this. The old way is like having a long, messy receipt of every single little edit. The Git way is like taking a perfect high-resolution photograph of your entire project every single time you decide to save. It's a completely different mindset. So every time you take one of these photographs in Git speak, you're making a commit. A commit is that snapshot. It's a complete picture of everything in your project at that specific moment. And you might be thinking, doesn't that take up a ton of space? Well, this is where Git is super clever. If a file hasn't changed from the last snapshot, Git doesn't copy it again. It just points back to the last version it saw. Super efficient. And each commit gets its own unique fingerprint called a hash, which means the history is secure and can't be changed without anyone noticing. And this quote from Linus himself really hits the nail on the head. He says you can think of Git as just a file system. He designed it from that perspective, and that's the secret to why Git is so fast. Because you're not just tracking changes, you have the entire history, every single one of those snapshots right on your own machine. That's why checking out an old version or comparing changes is practically instantaneous. Okay, so we've got this awesome snapshot system, and everyone has the full history locally. And that combination is what truly unlocked safe, effective collaboration for teams. It's how huge teams can build incredibly complex software without, constantly breaking each other's work or worrying about losing anything. And to make all this teamwork happen, Git gives us a few core concepts. First, you have the repository, or repo for short. Just think of this as the project's entire history book, holding every single snapshot we've ever taken. Then there's the idea of a branch. This is probably one of the coolest features. It's like creating a separate timeline or a parallel universe for your code. You can go off and build a new feature in total safety without messing with the main stable version of your project. And finally, you have a merge. That's the magic trick where you take your finished work from your branch and weave it back into the main timeline. All right, so we've got these cool ideas, repos, branches, merges, but how does this all actually work day to day? Let's walk through the actual journey of a single code change to see how it moves from your brain to the final project. This is super important to get. Your code basically lives in 4 different places. First up is the working directory. That's easy. It's just the folder on your computer where you're writing code. Next, once you've made some changes you're happy with, you add them to the staging area. I like to think of this as being a photographer, getting everything ready for the shot. You're carefully choosing which changes you want to include in your next snapshot. Once you've got your shot composed, you commit those changes. This saves the snapshot for good in your local repository. That's your own personal copy of the project's entire history book. And finally, when you want to share your work with your team, you push your commits to the remote repository, which is a shared copy usually on a server somewhere. So how do we move our code between these 4 areas? With a few simple commands. To start a brand new project, you type git init. To grab an existing project, you'll use git clone. As you're working, you'll use git add to move files from your working directory to the staging area. Then, git commit takes that snapshot and saves it to your local repo. When you're ready to share, git push sends your commits up to the remote repo. And to get the latest updates from your team, you'll use git pull. Really, these commands are the bread and butter of working with Git. Now, because of all this power and flexibility, Git isn't just another tool. It's become the tool. It's the undisputed king of version control. And I'm not kidding. Just look at this number. A Stack Overflow survey found that almost 94% of developers use Git. 94%! That is just a massive number. It tells you that if you're going to work in software today, learning Git isn't just a nice to have, it's absolutely essential. And if you want to see just how dominant it is, look at this chart. The other systems like Subversion or Mercurial are barely even on the map. It's not even a competition anymore. Git didn't just win the race, it lapped everyone twice. And because everyone uses Git, this huge ecosystem of tools has popped up around it. You've definitely heard of these: GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. These platforms are built on top of Git, and they've become the central meeting place for developers all over the world to host their code and work together. Okay, let's wrap this up with the key takeaways. First, remember that Git is your code's time machine. It thinks in snapshots, not just tiny changes. Second, it's all about distributed power. Every single developer has the full project history right on their computer. And finally, flexible collaboration. Those branches and merges are what let us work on new things safely without breaking the main project. So yeah, Git completely revolutionized how we collaborate on code. It solved this huge problem of how to get tons of people working together effectively. But it makes you wonder, right? What's the next big collaboration problem we need to solve? What will be the Git for that? Something to think about. The best way to learn is to try it, so I really encourage you to set up a small test repo and just play around with these commands. And of course, if you want more tech tutorials and roadmaps, make sure to subscribe to us here on the Duo Blocks Edx YouTube channel. Thanks for watching!